Something was off last night on Fox News. It wasn't what was said at first, it was how it was said. The pauses, the repetition, the way Donald Trump kept circling back to the same point like his mind couldn't let it go. Presidents always lose the midterms. Almost always. It's inevitable, psychological, unexplainable. When someone this powerful starts talking about inevitability, that's not confidence. That's fear wearing a calm face. He kept insisting everything was going great. Best first year ever. Incredible success. Historic achievements. And yet, every few seconds, he drifted back to the same dark cloud hanging over him. 2026. You don't do that if you feel secure. You don't publicly rationalize defeat unless you're already bracing for it. What made it more unsettling was how resigned he sounded. Not angry, not defiant. Resigned. Like someone who has already run the numbers and doesn't like what they see. The tone wasn't, "We're going to win." It was, "Here's why losing wouldn't be my fault." And the timing matters. Gerrymandering orders were supposed to lock things down. They didn't. Court challenges are piling up. Blue states aren't folding. Red states aren't delivering clean victories. The House margin is evaporating in real time. Deaths, resignations, chaos. Control is slipping before a single ballot is cast. That's when the interviews stopped being casual and started feeling strategic. Lower expectations. Set the narrative early. When loss comes, it won't be a failure. It'll be history repeating itself. That's the frame being built right now. Then he pivoted to policy wins, but listened closely to what he chose. Tax cuts. No tax on tips. No tax on overtime. No tax on Social Security. Big promises delivered quickly, confidently, and loosely. Because details don't matter when reassurance is the goal. What matters is calming a base that can sense weakness even if it doesn't want to admit it. But the cracks widened when the military budget came up. A 50% increase. Not incremental. Not cautious. Explosive. At a moment when Americans are being told to tighten their belts. Buy fewer gifts. Accept higher costs. Personal sacrifice for the public. Unlimited spending for the state. That contrast wasn't accidental. It was revealing. For years, Trump flirted with the idea of slashing military spending, ending endless wars, draining the swamp, winning over skeptics across the political spectrum. And now, none of that matters. The same voices that swore Trump would rein in the war machine are silent as he prepares to supercharge it. And Hannity knew it. You could hear it in how the question was framed. Careful, almost cautious. Like he understood this was a political landmine. Because Americans can tolerate a lot, but telling them to live with less while funneling trillions into weapons is a dangerous gamble. Then came the Nobel moment. And this is where it got uncomfortable. The hunger, the validation, the obsession with legacy. The idea that liberation, recognition, and power can all be negotiated in the same breath. The offer, the flattery, the acceptance without hesitation. It didn't feel like diplomacy. It felt like vanity colliding with geopolitics. Like legitimacy being bartered instead of earned. And when Venezuela came up again, the illusion of democracy fell apart completely. Elections can wait, he said. First, the country has to be rebuilt. First, control. First, order. Later, maybe the people get a say. That's not a delay. That's a blueprint. History is full of temporary arrangements that never end. And when leaders start talking this way, it's not about helping a country. It's about managing it. Then, almost casually, Cuba entered the conversation. Survival questioned. Collapse predicted. Dependency framed as leverage. Soldiers wiped out. Numbers avoided. Consequences minimized. The way you talk when you want to normalize escalation without triggering alarm. And suddenly the pattern snapped into focus. A man who campaigned against regime change, wars, now openly discussing reshaping entire regions. A movement that once rejected intervention, now cheering it. Polls flipping overnight. Principles dissolving on command. That's the most dangerous part of all. Not the contradictions. Not even the policies. But the speed at which loyalty replaces belief. The moment when fear of losing power becomes justification for anything. This wasn't just an interview. It was a warning sign. A president preparing for political loss while reaching for more control. A man who knows that losing the House doesn't just mean embarrassment. It means oversight, investigations, limits. And that's why the panic mattered. Not because he admitted midterms are hard, but because, for the first time, it sounded like he knows what comes after losing them. And that scares him far more than any election ever could. The real fear doesn't start before the midterms. It starts the moment they're over. Because losing the House isn't just a political setback, it's a structural threat. It means subpoenas, hearings, investigations, endless questions asked under oath. And that's why the anxiety you saw wasn't about history or psychology or voter behavior. It was about exposure. For years, Donald Trump has operated best in chaos. Divided institutions, paralysis, loyal majorities. But the moment one chamber flips, the entire equation changes. Suddenly, control becomes defense. And defense becomes obsession. That's when leaders stop talking about winning elections and start talking about power in other forms. Executive authority, military strength, foreign leverage, narrative dominance. When ballots become unpredictable, other tools start to look more attractive. Listen carefully to how often he now talks about force, military superiority, budget expansion, threats abroad, enemies everywhere. These aren't random talking points. They're reminders, signals, messages to opponents and allies alike that even if political power weakens, coercive power remains intact. This is why the budget matters so much. A 50% increase isn't about readiness. It's about leverage. It's about ensuring that no matter what happens in Congress, the executive branch retains overwhelming control over the most powerful institution in the country. And historically, that's not accidental. When leaders fear oversight, they don't seek compromise. They seek insulation. They surround themselves with loyalists. They discredit institutions in advance. They label investigations as witch hunts before they even begin. Sound familiar? The rhetoric shifts too. Suddenly, democracy becomes conditional. Elections are important, but only when the country is ready. Oversight is necessary, but only when it's fair. Accountability matters, but only when it doesn't threaten stability. These qualifiers are not harmless. They are escape hatches. And you can see it forming already. The media is lying. The courts are biased. The system is rigged. The bureaucracy is corrupt. Once enough people accept that premise, any action taken to correct the system can be justified, even extreme ones. This is where the movement comes in, not the voters, the followers. Because when a base is trained to distrust every institution except one man, that man becomes the institution. Loyalty replaces law. Belief replaces evidence. And fear becomes fuel. The most unsettling part isn't that opinions shift. It's how fast they do. Anti-war one day, pro-intervention the next. Anti-spending yesterday, military expansion today. There's no resistance, no friction, just alignment. Whatever direction power points, the crowd follows. And that's why losing the House terrifies him. Because Congress doesn't respond to loyalty. It responds to process, to documents, to testimony, to timelines, to facts that don't bend to rallies or ratings. Once that door opens, it doesn't close easily. Investigations don't need approval from the White House. Committees don't need permission to ask questions. And narratives don't survive transcripts. That's when leaders start talking louder, acting bigger, creating distractions, manufacturing urgency. Because if the public is focused on external threats, they're less focused on internal accountability. This is how democracies strain. Not with tanks in the streets, not overnight, but with erosion, with constant justification, with the idea that extraordinary times require extraordinary authority, indefinitely. So when you saw that anxiety on Fox News, it wasn't just about 2026. It was about what happens after, about whether the system still works when power says no. Because the real test isn't whether elections happen. It's whether leaders accept the consequences when they don't go their way. And that's the question no one on that set wanted to ask out loud.